And we will open then the conversation for all the public to. Then I will start myself with a comment and maybe. It has been actually amazing, both presentations. I mean, coming from different fields of research and love for the landscape, for the natural environment, the urban environment. I mean, the relation that we establish with the environment actually is a predicative. It's a verb. It's not an adjective, but it's a verbalizing. We are verbalizing space. But in both cases is this will to render that predication, that relation we establish, how we establish and how we render, how we represent it, and to understand how we relate to that predication. Actually, from both sides, both of you, what you wanted is to enlarge your own knowledge by getting to know other disciplines and getting to know how the disciplines work and enrich your own research on that. Having both an objective in your search for what landscape is, natural landscape for Irene, the historical space or the what we say the meaning of the that we give to the elements of space when we build space through history and through archaeology. In both of you, my question would be, which things have changed in this process so how your vision has been enlarged and which new things you have discovered by this contact with these new disciplines and what you have learned and what you have given back to the other discipline. So how has been this exchanged? What you got and what you gave to the discipline that you were working with?
Please.
Okay. Hello? Yeah. So I think what I gain is endless. It's I don't think by now I can survive without the other disciplines. Like for me it's just a vital need. Like I just can't function anymore without knowing more things. It's impossible for me. I don't go to a place and I see how nice it and I can draw it. It's just not there for me. I need to get into things and I need to find subject and really technically I can't produce without. So for me it's it's a need. It creates quite a different understanding of the world because once you know all these things are part of us, it's very different. It's just a very different way of looking at the world, no? Like it's a complete different awareness, a complete different. Nothing is there just because, no. And that you get to know a lot when you work with scientists, and then different people can explain different things. And that's one. And what do I give back? I don't know. I guess what happens to them, I mean, I have no idea why they have so much patience for me, but I think it has to do with what you said at the beginning, has to do with the love. So the love for the subject. So when they see someone caring so much for the same thing they care, they're happy. And they're also normally curious people. So for them, they're very curious to see what you can do with whatever they study. And how someone else can bring a different angle. And there is a little bit of an outreach side that's less poetic for me. I don't like it so much, but they always also see the outreach, which is, I guess for them it's important. And I think artists have a little bit of, we are close enough, but a little bit less close than scientists. I mean, people can walk into a show and see things. I mean, reading a paper is... Yeah, and it's difficult for them to reach out. And as artists, we kind of have we are quite bad, but we are a little bit aware of the need of communication. So I think that way it helps.
It helps them to
Yeah.
share the work also.
Thank you, Anna, for the question. It's a very interesting one. At the same time, it could take very long to answer properly. But let me try just a quick answer following part what Irene has said. First of all, put it in a very practical or concrete sense. In the case of our project, the project I was talking about, in my own case, what I learned from neuroscience was to look at, in a different way, to the biology of life and the influence of the biology of life in cultural life. And this is very important because most of us, perhaps in this room, are overall culturalists. I have been the most of my life trying to think about history, about archaeology, about human and social life, without paying too much attention to biology, because this is always thought to be suspicious of biological determinism or biological reductionism. But this is not the case. You can find many things there. And for instance, what I was telling about the inner models, just think about this concept, because it's an extremely good example where biology and history together can make better. Because, first of all, the inner model, there exists for humans because biological constraints. But exactly because we have these biological constraints, then the historical setting, the material setting, becomes so critical in the construction of the inner model. So it's a good example where a combined approach between two different disciplines, crossing the border between these disciplines, could help us for producing a better understanding. I know that from the point of view of neuroscientists, looking at the project from the other side, the important thing that they get in the project is to realize that everything that they have been dealing with for years and years and years have to do with something that they never consider, that is historical circumstance, even historical determinations. So for a neuroscientist, properly speaking, it's not really new to discover that the world is affecting the construction of the inner model. What is totally new for them, and this is amazing to realize because it looks so simple, but it is as things are. What is really amazing for them is to realize that this world is not just a physical, ecological, or natural world. It's an historical world. A world produced by historical circumstances, but historical relationships. So, just to finish, Anna, I would stress, taking your question, I would stress that in research, in science, but perhaps in many other fields too, the important thing is to think out of the box and to think in terms of the mixture with other different disciplines, crossing question, crossing data, and so on. Sorry to say, but to my view, nowadays, we are in the 21st century. We are in a world that is facing a lot of heavily or huge critical crises or critical problems. There must be some concepts that we should do differently in many ways. And one of the things to do differently in science is to try to think out of the usual disciplines and to think more in a more transdisciplinary way.
I don't know if mine is not working. Now it's working.
Would you like?
And actually, yes. And actually, because for decades, different disciplines have been enlarging knowledge, but close up in specific matters. And when you exchange that knowledge, then you realize that you have a bigger picture of things. You see the things in a bigger picture. And then you see that there's a complementarity on these disciplines. And that then you can really paint actually what things look like with the complexity that there is there, but putting everything on the same table, actually. Because when you were saying, sometimes when you paint, for example, she chooses one layer of information to make it more clear. But actually, when you overlap the layers, you can also see depths. That is also important in research, to see the depth of knowledge too. It's important, the division, to divide, to understand, but the depth is also, so I think is what both you said, that it's very important, this enlargement of knowledge through interaction and entanglement. Yeah. What's the word? Entanglement. Thank you. Lauro.
So, well, thank you for these illuminating presentations. And so I think that it's very interesting also to I think that it's very interesting also to note our conceptual process of construction of your respective works, no? Because, well, I think that we are in a presence of two true visionaries, no? In the good sense of the word, no? And as we have the opportunity to see through your presentation, no? And I think that you have in common also an heterodoxy. And heterodoxy in overcoming the limits of your fields, going beyond in a continuous process of transformation, on translation, rethinking your activity, that there are therefore activities in constant movements, no? And translation. So far from conventional rigidities. This is, after having listened to both of you, and given that we are in a transdisciplinary and transcultural scenario, I am interested in how you interpreted the point of connection between your own activities in order to bring in together, no, this point of connection that, in my view, are represented in your two presentations.
Within our practices or
Yeah.
in our
in
comparison?
If you have some point of connection, because I think that there are not. So.
Okay. Yeah, in that, if you don't mind, yes, I will answer first, because first of all, taking advantage of your question, Laura, I would like to do a public appreciation of the work by Irene, because it was really amazing for me, the quality of the work and the sort of dialogue you produce through art with landscape, with nature, and with other disciplines. This is extremely important to take into account to answer Lauro's question. Because let me come back to my own talk. I said something that, properly speaking, was not so totally right. I did in a simple way to simplify. I said that the only way to change the inner model is from power, through power. Well, actually, this is not true. But it was to become shorter. It was a point that had to be said. There is another way of defeating, or at least changing, the inner model, and it's the work of art. It's the operation of art. The important role of art has been always to think against the inner model and to create things, to create surprise, to create new ways of seeing that, properly speaking, are opening or are forcing to change the inner model. And this is one of the reasons that I think that actually empower the connection of art with scientific disciplines, with many other things, of course, with the public and so on, but also with the scientific practice and many, with scientific disciplines. I would like to stress that. Art is one of the ways without at least clear power relations to change the inner models we use all the time.
Thanks for your question, and thanks for your answer. And for me, it was also interesting to see, for example, this idea of, I never worded myself, I mean, I was never able to articulate it, but for example, when I choose a subject, it has to do with something I don't have a representation in my head. So, for example, when I choose to draw lianas, it's because I really don't know how to draw a liana. I never saw a liana drawn, or with these little strange animals that I never saw. When you look at things in the microscope, they look very different to what you can imagine. So how to draw something you doesn't have an image yet, for me it's one of my goals. So that's for me actually was really enlightening to kind of, I say, okay, that's what I'm trying to, that's actually what I'm trying to do. It has a name. And for me that's, and also there is something else that for me is super important, that people keep asking me why you put yourself in those environments, why don't you take a picture? It's easier, it's less cold, or less mosquitoes or whatever, less money. And for me it has to do with the experience. So I don't actually exactly realizing which one of the four things of the cognitive process drawing will be, but it has to do with creating and having an experience that is truly embodied. Like making a drawing on site is an embodied experience, and that for me can only exist that way. So for me it was really enlightening to see that has actually a grounds in some theory that you're looking into. I don't know if I answered.
Yeah, sure. So, and now due to the fact that we are with these two visionaries, that they are both, or you are real landscapes, no? With these constellations of questions that you are put on the table. So now is the time to open a discussion. So please, we are waiting for your answer on your questions.
Well, I think it is a provocation that you are doing, and I take it. I would like to ask to both of them if they consider themselves really, you said visionary or missionary or new messiahs, okay? How they do consider themselves as in the field of science. And also, I really love the presence of kids, because they are really guiding us to see science in another way. But I really want to listen to you, how you consider themselves.
Yeah, you will leave me this.
It will be interesting, because I think it's a question that could be perhaps answered from a totally different way, from the side of art and the side of science.
Yeah, no, I don't see myself as a visionary. Sure, missionary I like more. No, I don't see myself like that. But no, I think there are also other artists. I think we're all very unique artists. I mean, that's what we are. Me and all artists. That we create narratives the best way we can, and I think most people do their best. So I don't see myself. There are a couple of things that are. I have a lot of. There are certain aspects that make the practice particular, and that has to do with the collage of. You want to say something? Yeah. No, like some form of a collage of a life trajectory. I have half of my training in academic education in Argentina, half of my training in a very conceptual, fancy art school in the Netherlands. I have my home. I connected to one landscape. It's like a clash of things that make different skills, so that creates a narrative. But there are many artists, and there are many good people. But for me, I just want to say one thing, which is that for me, my battle is in I would say, I mean, it's in both things, but my battle is more in art. I mean, my internal discussion is with the history of painting, my environment as a painter. If I have to talk with something in my head when I'm working, the science is around. It's the context where I actually spend most of my time. But in my heart, I'm always discussing with people who paint, how they paint. Like those are my colleagues, even if they're not alive.
Yes, not only a question. When I say visionary, it's in a positive, as heterodoxy also, in the sense that somebody that is open new views, new visions about a kind of job of expertise and this open a new way. This is my idea of visionary. No, it's more specifically derived that the word visionary. No, sorry, in this case, it's only an acceleration.
Maybe the point is that in science and art we need a new, engaged, political imagination. And that is what they provide us this morning. But Professor Boado, Felipe, did not went to political aspects. He said, I will don't go through.
I did.
You said that in your, but that was the case that I think both of you presented to us. A new engagement of our imagination in order to face, and to take the risks that we are taking right now.
Well, thank you for the question and also the appreciation of our standpoints. Answer directly to the question, I must say that also I don't see myself like a visionary. Actually, the most of my time, I must tell you, that I am trying to keep under control whatever crazy idea I have, because what we have to do is to work seriously, to work honestly, to work against and about our data, our techniques, our people, our colleagues and fellows. So, no, not at all. I don't look myself like a visionary. I look myself as a person who does what I must do. For doing this, I think it's important to keep a humble position. I think it's, thank you. Yeah, a position open to hear everything, to dialogue with everybody, to dialogue with everything, even with the trees, even with the nature, even with the land. And then just to try to radicalize, in this sense, I would say, the conclusions of your own thought. And these conclusions many times come to the political arena. What is not the partisan policy, but is about how to change things, how to understand better in critical ways what is happening, and what is the idea of how the things you are trying to research could help to understand better the present-day circumstance or even to change them. In this sense, I would say that another important aspect of our activity must be always keeping a political orientation, a political commitment. But still, we are scientists, and in that case, I don't say scientists in a very optimistic or presumptuous way. It's exactly the opposite. When saying scientists, I am saying humbly scientists, people that must take care of our data, of our techniques, of the people who we work with, and so on, and nothing else.
Well, I think that I'm going to repeat. Thank you very much for your amazing both presentation. In the case of Irene Kopelman, I think it's very interesting, but because you show us a totally different picture and perception of the Ribeira Sacra landscape that we see from an archaeological vision. And in the case of Felipe, I think that your project is very interesting for the advance of the research and in a conceptual cognition and conditional archaeology. But I want to have you a question related of the picture of the megalithic monuments of Barbanza. In the picture that you put, you can see a second skyline with windmills, with large wind farms. And you said before that you analyzed not only the past materiality, but analyzed the materiality of the present too. Are you going to include the analysis of this materiality, which is actually and radically transformed the landscape and this perception? And in this case, are you going to analyze how it's influenced the perception of these historical landscapes?
Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. It's an extremely good idea. Honestly speaking, it was not conceived initially, but so soon you were speaking, I came into the idea, and I was not the only one in the room, but some other one too, that realized that it could be an extraordinary case study to do an analysis of the windmills landscapes to compare exactly what is a communitarian-oriented and megalithic-oriented Neolithic landscape with what is a post-industrial, almost post-modern, because it's post-rural. It has nothing to do with a traditional rural landscape. So it will be and Barbanza, of course, is extremely good occasion to compare both. Overall, because at least to start, I think we have got already the working hypothesis. When we come to the windmills landscape, what we are going to realize is a landscape that is overcoming the land, imposing totally vertical constructions that are also creating vertical relationships. Of course, if you look at a windmill from the very far away, you still look like this. But when you approach the windmill, the only way to look at it is by this. That has been usually, as I said before, the sort of gaze we must devote when we approach power. It doesn't matter if power is the god or power is a chief or whatever. And this is exactly what is perhaps all the matter around with the windmills. So thank you so much. We will come to this at that point. I should say that perhaps even it won't be too difficult in terms of the different sort of analysis we can do. It won't be a really difficult to do this piece of research, and it will be very informative too. So you have gained at least a credit in the future work for that. Thank you.
Is there another question in the? Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for the presentations. My question is for Professor Felipe about embodied cognition. I'm curious if in Incipit you are also researching about the relation with the spaces and the body in territory, like walking. And if you study embodied cognition relating this relation and DNA genealogy, if we can interpret embodied cognition in terms of inheritance.
Well, the first thing The answer to the first question is yes, but more or less. Yeah, we are not properly doing yet body research, but we will come to it definitely, because something that we have to track and to analyze is, for instance, how people move in front of different sort of arts. And then once again, we will compare, of course, movement in galleries of art, but we will compare with different sort of prehistoric rock arts. So that way we will come more and more engaged with body language and this study of body language, but it's not properly a research line today. And the second question is that, at least for the time being, is not really planned to do. We are not working in this sort of things, and I don't know if it would be. But talking about embodiment and the importance of body language for everything, I suppose that perhaps Irene would like to add something, because your presentation was also very interesting, not only because you presented the final products, your works of art, but also the photos with the making of your art. And these photos were informative about how you or other people move around the landscape and understood the landscape. So they were, again, a very good example of the interaction between body movement and land. I don't know if you want to add something.
Well, no, not in particular, but for me it was interesting. Again, I wasn't so much aware, but I realized while listening to your presentation that like, for example, I have to choose my viewpoints from the landscape, and that has to do with, like, these things artists, I guess we do it intuitively, but it's basically what we're trying to do, no? Like the distance to the object, if you look that way or that way, it changes also the relationship with the landscape. Or if I work in the microscope, that I'm a gigantic thing next to that little microscopic insect, or if it's a landscape, that is the other way around, actually. That landscape can crash me in a second if something happens. So it's those kind of things are very important to the work and to the relationship to drawing and the outcome. Those things for me are very important.
I will add something small before the next question, but it came now to my mind that about embodiment, cognition, and embodied experience, there's part of the knowledge that you get that you cannot describe it. It only remains in the body. And this is important. And when you presented the last project that you did, the camp drawing, the camp, actually it's very important because you experienced yourself that you were getting this knowledge through this embodied experience, and you wanted to share this with other people. And the people that actually were there drawing, they also maybe realized this enlarged knowledge that the body was acquiring by being there in the landscape. So actually, I think in embodied cognition is needed the sharing of body experience. But I'm talking this because I'm doing this type also in this part of research of in the theories of non-representation. Actually, all the theories of non-representation are related to the non-possible. We cannot communicate certain type of knowledge that remains in the cognition of the body itself. Okay. So next question. Is there another question?
May I ask something very quick?
Yes.
Have you had in this, sorry because I could not be here the 3 days of the conference. My question is very simple. In connection to this, have you had in the conference any contribution about dance? About, no?
Okay.
So, well.
Lauro, you want to add something?
No, he's only finished. No, because it's very interesting, the conversation, but I think that we are in time, no? well, unfortunately. But thank you very much for the presentation, the contribution, all of you. I think that we have the possibility to put together the two interventions, and also to develop point of comments of dissent also. And this is important, and I agree that now we are in a very challenging time with everything is changed, and we have also to take care with the questions that are appearing in our common life. Some of them very worried, and other we can to see with optimism, no? And so, but for this is an interesting question, because we need also that science, thinker, art, culture, everything, develop new forms of presentation, and outside of our Western hegemonic conceptions, no? So, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for you. And